The grand Blackwood hotel stood alone, a sentinel against the crashing waves, once majestic, now decrepit, a history etched in salt and shadows. The air hung heavy with the smell of damp wood and brine. Seagulls screeched, their cries echoing the building's melancholy. The Blackwood promised a night's rest, but some promises are best left broken. Thomas shivered, pulling his collar tight against the biting wind. The storm had come out of nowhere, catching him unprepared. The wind howled like a wild beast, and the rain lashed against his face, making it difficult to see. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones, and his fingers were numb despite his gloves. He had to find shelter and fast. He hurried through the creaking doors, seeking refuge from the storm outside. The door groaned in protest as he pushed it open, and he stumbled into the lobby, dripping wet. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the freezing storm, and he took a moment to catch his breath, grateful to be out of the elements. The lobby was dim, illuminated by a single flickering chandelier. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and dust, and the silence was almost oppressive. It felt like stepping back in time, to a place that had seen better days, but was now forgotten by the world. The old man at the desk looked up, his face a roadmap of wrinkles. His eyes were sharp and piercing, belying his age. He seemed to have been sitting there for an eternity, waiting for someone to arrive. His presence was both comforting and unsettling, like a guardian of secrets long buried. "Room 13, you said?" His voice was a dry rasp. It sounded like it hadn't been used in years, and it sent a shiver down Thomas's spine. The number 13 hung in the air, heavy with superstition and dread. Thomas hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should reconsider. Thomas nodded, a sense of unease creeping up his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that he was stepping into a place where he didn't belong, but he was too tired and cold to care. He just wanted a warm bed and a few hours of sleep. The man's smile was unsettling. It didn't reach his eyes, and it seemed to hide 1,000 secrets. Thomas tried to ignore it, but the image of that smile stayed with him, gnawing at the edges of his mind. "Enjoy your stay, sir, if you can." The words were a challenge, a dare. Thomas forced a smile and took the key, his hand trembling slightly. He turned and headed towards the stairs, the old man's words echoing in his mind. What had he gotten himself into? The night was far from over, and Thomas had a feeling it would be one he would never forget. The hallway was shrouded in shadows, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Each step on the threadbare carpet echoed in the silence. Room 13 loomed at the end, its door slightly ajar. Thomas hesitated. A chill settled over him. He pushed the door open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The room was surprisingly spacious, but the gloom seemed to swallow the light. He tossed his bag on the bed, the springs groaning beneath its weight. The room was cold, a chill that seemed to seep into his bones. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around himself as he glanced around the dimly lit room. The flickering lamp cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, making the room feel even more eerie, the springs groaning beneath its weight. The room was cold, even with the fireplace laid but unlit. He tried the switch, hoping to bring some warmth and light into the room, but the bulb only flickered weakly before plunging the room back into darkness. He sighed, feeling a sense of unease settle over him. The fireplace, though prepared, remained unlit, adding to the cold, unwelcoming atmosphere. He tried the switch again, but the bulb only flickered weakly before plunging the room back into darkness. Silence descended, broken only by the howling wind outside. He could hear the wind whistling through the cracks in the windows, adding to the sense of isolation. The bulb flickered weakly before plunging the room back into darkness. Silence descended, broken only by the howling wind outside. Then he heard it, a whisper, soft as a breath against his ear. He spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. The room was empty, but the whisper had been so clear, so close. The howling wind outside seemed to grow louder, as if trying to drown out the whisper. He stood still, straining to hear any other sounds. Then he heard it again, a whisper, soft and indistinct, but unmistakable. It sent a shiver down his spine. He turned slowly, scanning the room for any sign of movement, soft as a breath against his ear. He spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. The room was empty, but the whisper had been so clear, so close. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. "Just the wind," he muttered, trying to convince himself. But deep down, he knew it was something more. "Just the wind," he muttered, trying to convince himself. But the whisper had been so clear, so real. He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. He glanced around the room again, his eyes searching the shadows for any sign of movement. The flickering lamp cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel even more unsettling. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "It's just my imagination," he whispered, but the unease lingered. The flickering lamp. It was the only source of light in the room, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance and twist on the walls. The room was filled with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. He found a book of matches and lit the lamp on the nightstand. The small flame struggled to catch, flickering weakly before finally steadying. The dim light illuminated the room just enough to reveal the outlines of the furniture and the old dusty books that lined the shelves. The flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the wall. These shadows seemed almost alive, moving and shifting in a way that made him uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone, that something was watching him from the darkness. He tried to read, but the whispers continued, seeming to come from the walls themselves. The words on the page blurred as his mind struggled to focus. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with a sense of dread. He could almost make out words, but they were just beyond his understanding. He glanced nervously at the mirror above the fireplace. The mirror was an antique, its frame ornate but tarnished with age. It had been in the house for as long as he could remember, a silent witness to countless moments of his life. It was old and tarnished, its surface clouded with age. The glass was so murky that it was difficult to see a clear reflection. Yet he couldn't help but feel drawn to it, as if it held some secret that he needed to uncover. For a fleeting moment he thought he saw a figure standing behind him in the reflection. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. His heart raced as he spun around, but there was no one there. The room was empty, save for the flickering lamp and the oppressive silence. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The whispers had stopped, but the sense of unease remained, hanging in the air like a thick fog. He knew he wouldn't find peace until he understood what was happening, but the answers seemed just out of reach, hidden in the shadows cast by the flickering lamp. A cold embrace. Exhaustion tugged at him. He tried to ignore the whispers, the flickering lamp, the bone-chilling cold that seemed to emanate from the very walls. He lay down, pulling the blankets tight around him, but sleep wouldn't come. He felt a presence in the room, something unseen watching him. He felt it most strongly near the bed, a cold spot that seemed to grow colder as the night wore on. Midnight hour. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight. The sound echoed through the empty halls, amplifying the silence that followed. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. He could have sworn he heard his name. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel his fear rising, threatening to consume him. He had to get out of there. He had to escape room 13. The face in the mirror. He stumbled out of bed and towards the door. As he passed the mirror, he froze. The whispers stopped. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. It was a face twisted in agony, eyes wide with fear and something else, something ancient and evil. He watched in horror as the reflection reached out from the mirror, its icy fingers scraping against the glass. Escape! He didn't hesitate, he didn't scream, he ran. He threw open the door and raced down the hallway, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He didn't look back. He didn't dare to. He burst out of the hotel and into the storm, the rain a welcome relief against his skin. He ran until the Blackwood was nothing more than a distant silhouette against the raging sea. The Unresolved. He never returned to the Grand Blackwood Hotel. He never spoke of that night, of the horrors he witnessed in room 13, but sometimes in his dreams he could still hear the whispers. And he would wake in a cold sweat, the chilling certainty that whatever haunted room 13, it was still there, waiting, watching.